Nixlira's tendrils quivered with frustration as she deleted yet another application. 3 cycles of searching, and still no suitable roommate for her modest habitat in Meridian Station's quieter sector. The glowing screen illuminated her iridescent blue skin in the dimness she preferred. Too loud, probable nocturnal habits. Keep 6 pet Craxus, she muttered, scrolling through the remaining messages. Living expenses on the station had doubled since the trade embargo, and she needed to share her space or relocate to the overcrowded lower levels. The thought made her respiratory sacs constrict. Her original advertisement had been specific. Seeking quiet, solitary roommate for 2-chamber habitat in Sector 7. Minimal interaction preferred. No gatherings, no music amplification devices, no cooking of sulfurous compounds. Ideal for academic or meditation practitioner. Inquire via text communication only. She'd received 37 responses. Most ignored her carefully worded requirements. The doorbell's soft chime startled her. Nixlira rarely received visitors, another reason she loved this sector. She approached the entrance cautiously, unfurling one sensory tendril to pass through the identification scanner. The door slid open to reveal the last thing she expected, a human. Humans were uncommon in this spiral arm, typically appearing as loud traders, boisterous tourists, or occasionally as military representatives. This one stood quietly, slightly shorter than her 7 feet but still imposing to her untrained eyes. His skin was warm brown, eyes a startling green. He carried a single bag. "You must have the wrong habitat unit," Nixlira said, tendrils drawing closer to her body in the defensive posture of her species. Nixlira about the room, his voice was unexpectedly soft. "I'm Ellis, I messaged earlier." Her inner eyelids blinked rapidly in confusion. Ellis, the formal application with perfect record transfers and polite, minimal questioning. She hadn't registered the sender was human. She should close the door immediately. Humans were unpredictable, emotional, chaotic, weren't they? But this one stood perfectly still, respecting the threshold boundary. No extraneous movements, no unnecessary words. "You didn't mention your species," she said. "You didn't ask." A slight upward curve of his lips, what humans called a smile, she recalled from xenology studies, but subdued, not the garish expression she'd seen in media. "Humans are typically," she searched for a diplomatic term. "Loud," he finished. "Intrusive, over-animated, I'm aware of our reputation, I'm not typical." Something in the way he said it, quiet resignation rather than pride, made her pause. Her tendrils unconsciously extended slightly, detecting emotional chemistry. Beneath his calm exterior flowed currents of something familiar. Isolation, caution, the weight of experiences not shared. Against better judgment, Nixlira stepped aside. The habitat tour requires approximately 6 minutes. Ellis simply nodded, removing his shoes without being asked, another surprise. The tour was the shortest she'd given. She pointed out necessities, nutrition station, cleansing facilities, environmental controls, while he listened attentively, asking only practical questions about schedule preferences and maintenance expectations. "I work remote technical support during station night cycle," he explained. "I require minimal equipment, make little noise, and won't have visitors." Her tendrils wavered skeptically. All humans crave social interaction. Something flickered across his face, "Not all of us." When the tour reached her private chamber door, she expected him to peek inside as others had. Instead, he remained in the common area, respecting her unspoken boundary. "The terms are acceptable," he said, "if you're comfortable with a human roommate." Nixlira should have declined. Humans were trouble, her species had proverbs about their disruptive nature. Yet something about Ellis suggested he might understand the comfort of silence better than most of her own kind. "The advance payment transfers immediately upon agreement," she said, a final test. He initiated the transaction without haggling, the first applicant to do so. As they completed the contract, Nixlira noticed a barely perceptible tremor in his hands, quickly controlled. The subtle scent of something pharmaceutical lingered around him, medical rather than recreational. This human carried secrets just as she did. Perhaps that's why he sought anonymity in this distant corner of the station, away from his own kind. "Welcome to Habitat Unit 7328, she said formally. "I prefer low illumination and minimal conversation." Ellis nodded, the ghost of that restrained smile returning. "Sounds perfect." As he quietly arranged his few possessions in the secondary chamber, Nixlira wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake or a perfect choice. Either way, she sensed her carefully ordered existence was about to change. 14 station days into their arrangement, Nixlira concluded that Ellis might be the strangest human in the galaxy. because he was precisely what she'd requested in a roommate. He moved like a shadow through their shared space, his footfalls nearly silent. His daily routine was predictable, awakening precisely at third bell, consuming a bland nutrition pack, never using the aromatic cooking apparatus, and working on a data tablet with earpieces that contained whatever sounds humans required. She found herself studying him when he wasn't looking. Unlike her previous understanding of humans, Ellis seemed to prefer stillness. Sometimes he'd stand by the viewport for hours, watching distant stars with an expression she couldn't decipher but somehow recognized. Their interactions were minimal but not uncomfortable. Brief acknowledgments when paths crossed, occasional questions about environmental preferences, and once, an unexpected offering. "I noticed your humidity settings cycled down during station night," he'd said, holding out a small device. "This might help. It's a portable humidifier calibrated for your respiratory needs." She'd accepted it with surprised tendrils, unsure how to respond to thoughtfulness she hadn't experienced since leaving her homeworld. Tonight, she returned from research duties to find Ellis asleep on the common area lounging surface, data tablet still illuminated beside him. His face contorted suddenly, body tensing. A nightmare. Her species rarely experienced such things, but she recognized distress. Nixlira hesitated. Waking him seemed intrusive, yet leaving him suffering felt wrong. As she debated, Ellis jolted awake, eyes wild for a moment before recognition set in. "Apologies," he murmured, straightening. "Didn't mean to be in the common space." "You're permitted equal access," she reminded him, tendrils curling inward with awkwardness. "Bad dream," he explained unnecessarily. The vulnerability in his voice triggered something protective in her. "Would you prefer ambient lighting? My species uses it for stress reduction." Without waiting for response, she adjusted the habitat controls. The ceiling illumination shifted to a soft auroral pattern, subtle waves of blue-green light that mimicked the night skies of her homeworld. Ellis looked up, tension visibly easing from his shoulders. "That's beautiful." They sat in shared silence, watching the gentle light patterns. For the first time, Nixlira didn't feel the need to retreat to her chamber. "War medic," Ellis said abruptly. "I was stationed on Taros during the mineral conflicts. Civilian relief effort that became something else." Her tendrils extended slightly in acknowledgement. No questions, no pressure. "My research focuses on interspecies trauma responses," she offered in return. A small truth, not her whole story. He nodded, understanding the exchange for what it was, a tentative bridge. The next morning brought an unexpected development. Nixlira emerged to find Ellis attempting to prepare a traditional morning meal from her culture, steamed chloroproteins with mineral supplements. The result was hilariously wrong, the consistency more appropriate for building material than food, but the gesture struck her deeply. "The taste receptors are on the inner tendrils, not the external ones," she explained, demonstrating the proper consumption technique. Ellis laughed, the first time she'd heard the sound from him. It was softer than she expected, warm like the amber liquids humans sometimes consumed. "Proper cultural exchange demands reciprocity," she stated formally, though her tendrils curled in what her species recognized as amusement. "I shall attempt a human breakfast tomorrow." "Looking forward to it," he said with that subtle smile that was becoming familiar. That evening, Nixlira realized something had shifted. They still maintained their separate routines, still respected boundaries, but the silence between them had transformed from a barrier into a shared language. When she retired to her chamber, she noticed he'd left the humidifier running, calibrated perfectly to her preferred density. The small gesture felt more significant than she could articulate. On her datapad, she found herself researching human medicinal compounds, specifically those prescribed for post-traumatic stress conditions. The traces she'd sensed on Ellis finally identified, her scientific curiosity rationalized what her instincts already knew. Her quiet human roommate carried wounds deeper than physical. As the station's night cycle commenced, Nixlira left her chamber door partially open for the first time. Not an invitation, merely a symbol that the boundaries between them were evolving. The station-wide power failure struck without warning. Emergency systems maintained life support and minimal lighting, but the ambient temperature plummeted as climate controls failed. For most station residents, it was an inconvenience. For Nixlira, whose species evolved on a tropical world, it was potentially dangerous. Ellis found her huddled in the common area, tendrils wrapped tightly around her torso, skin dulling from vibrant blue to a concerning gray. Core temperature dropping, she managed through quivering respiratory sacs. Hibernation response initiating. Without hesitation, Ellis disappeared into his chamber, returning with thermal blankets from his emergency kit. These reflect 99% of body heat, he explained, wrapping them carefully around her shivering form. When that proved insufficient, he made a decision. I need to increase ambient temperature. Human body heat runs higher than most species. Would proximity be unacceptable? Through clouding consciousness, Nixlira recognized the carefully constructed question, respecting her boundaries even now. She managed a tendril gesture of assent. Ellis sat beside her on the lounging surface, creating a tent with the thermal blankets over them both. The warmth of his body radiated outward, and gradually her shivering subsided. Military emergency training, he explained softly, though usually it was humans I was keeping warm. The intimacy of the situation might have been uncomfortable before, but survival needs overcame cultural hesitation. As her temperature stabilized, Nixlira found herself relaxing against him. You were a healer, she observed, not a question. Ellis stared at the emergency lights pulsing softly overhead. I joined to help. Civilian medical program, conflict zones, disaster relief, not military technically. Yet you have military training. The line blurred on Taro's. His voice dropped. Mining colony dispute turned into urban warfare. Relief workers got caught between factions, had to adapt. In the darkness, truth seemed easier to share. You lost someone, she said, tendrils unconsciously extending to detect the emotional compounds now flowing freely from him. Everyone, my entire medical team. I was gathering supplies when the shelter was targeted. His breathing changed, became controlled, deliberate. 26 beings I was responsible for. Nixlira's tendrils gently brushed his hand, the first deliberate contact she'd initiated. Her species communicated deepest emotions through touch, not words. Survivor's burden. He looked at her with surprise, then understanding. You know it. The emergency lighting cast blue shadows across them as she nodded. My research wasn't always academic. I was a communications specialist on diplomatic missions, specialized in emotional interpretation between species. What happened? Her tendrils curled protectively. I detected assassination intent too late. The ambassador she was like family died while I attempted to warn her. My people believe failure of such magnitude can only come from complicity. They exiled you, he whispered, the realization dawning, for trying to save someone. For failing to save someone, she corrected. I haven't used my full empathic abilities since. Too painful. Ellis shifted slightly, facing her. In the dim light, his eyes held no pity, only recognition. We're both hiding from what we were. The confession hung between them, neither denial nor acceptance. As the station temperature continued dropping, their proximity became necessity. Ellis arranged the blankets into a rudimentary shelter within their shelter, trapping heat more efficiently. Your heart rate increases when you're near me, Nixlira observed scientifically, though her own biochemistry was behaving strangely as well. Human physiological response, he said, a flush visible even in the blue emergency lighting. To danger. To attraction, he clarified, then looked away. I apologize if that's offensive. Her tendrils fluttered in what her species would recognize as pleased embarrassment. It is, not unwelcome data. The power returned abruptly hours later, habitat systems humming back to life. The temperature normalized, eliminating the need for their shared warmth. Neither moved immediately. Thank you, she said finally, for the survival assistance. Ellis smiled, not the reserved expression she'd grown accustomed to, but something more genuine. Thank you for trusting me. When they finally separated, something fundamental had changed. The shells they'd built around themselves had cracked, allowing glimpses of who they were beneath their careful facades. That night, for the first time since arriving at Meridian Station, Nixlira's dreams weren't of failure and exile, but of warm eyes and gentle hands that understood the language of her silence.